Good afternoon. This week we're talking about a person from the postbellum time in the United States and how the postbellum economy affected them, or how they affected that postbellum economy. So I've chosen to talk about John Rockefeller. I find Rockefeller to be a pretty fascinating character of this time period, but also because of his actions and his work that he did and the events surrounding all of that, how it still plays out to this day in the American economy 130, 140 years after the fact. So Rockefeller obviously was an oil baron. People would refer to him as either a robber baron or captain of industry, your term of choice depending on your opinion of Rockefeller, Carnegie, etc. But Rockefeller had his oil business, and he would go into different sections, different regions of the country. And as he did, he would undercut the smaller oil industries, oil companies that were there. So, the examples I like to use in some of my classroom examples, just for lack of having a specific dollar amount, Rockefeller may come in and oil company A may be selling oil for $10 a barrel, and Rockefeller would come in and sell it for $5 a barrel until he ran them out of business. And as soon as he did, he would jack his price up to $15 or $20 a barrel because he was the only game in town at that point, right? So Rockefeller did this until he had created a monopoly and controlled the oil industry throughout the United States. He used vertical integration, horizontal integration, and all that in order to control the process, control the product, and of course control how it got to market and was delivered from there, and the money that was made from it. So that's how Rockefeller's system started off. Eventually, in the anti-monopoly fervor, the progressive era movement that was going on in the early 1900s, the Supreme Court broke up Standard Oil in 1911 and said, because he had a trust, he had a monopoly, they were going to get rid of it. And again, we know as historians that the progressive era brought on this anti-monopoly movement and helped bring this to an end. Of course, Rockefeller's it wasn't hurting as a result. To this day, Standard Oil, which is basically now Exxon, is still ubiquitous when it comes to gas stations all over the world, really. So Standard Oil continues to this day, but the impact that Rockefeller, and this is all coming out of postbellum economy. We're talking about 1865 to 1900, and then on from there. But it's interesting because if we look at Bensel's article, The Political Economy of American Industrialization, when he describes the work that people were doing during this time, all of a sudden you had these entrepreneurs, you had these captains of industries who came along, and they were able to take new goods, find new ways to get them to market, and make a ton of money off of it, coming out of the Civil War, coming out of this division in America. Bensel does a good job of describing what those entrepreneurs were like. Another interesting source that I used was Dr. Roberts' video that we looked at this week, which was the big picture of American industrialization. And he talked a little bit about how, when we were talking about entrepreneurs, how this history of entrepreneurs, and again, he alludes to this, and he talks about, maybe as historians, our field of expertise is probably not economics, probably not entrepreneurship, but how that field of economics or entrepreneurship can carry over into so many other fields of historical expertise that we may have. So if we were looking at that, I think it's interesting because even to this day, you still have a few more modern examples that tie in with Rockefeller's postbellum activities. There's still the anti-monopoly movement. You think about Microsoft in the 90s. Microsoft was forced to stop their monopoly on placing the Windows operating system on every single device that was out there at the time. Another one I like to look at a lot is baseball's antitrust legislation. So I've spent a lot of time studying baseball, the history of baseball, and writing about that. So in 1922, the Supreme Court, again, this is the middle of all this anti-monopoly fervor, right? So the Supreme Court says, well, baseball is not a business, it's a professional sport, so we're going to let it operate outside of these guidelines that everybody else has in regards to monopolies and trust. So 1922, baseball gets this antitrust legislation in place, or antitrust uh, uh, operation in place, and they stayed with that. Players began to test that in regards to free agency, things of that sort later on in the 60s and 70s. Then eventually they were able to reach some agreements to kind of slow this down and break this up. It didn't officially really end until 1998 with what they call the Curt Flood Act. And when that happened, even in that, it wasn't an official end to baseball's antitrust exemption. What it did, it was an unofficial end to it, if you will. So again, and this I come back to Dr. Roberts' points about how these industrialists, these entrepreneurs, these people who are prominent in economics, how so much of what they did in their specific realm carries over to so much more of history, to so much more of culture and society. And I use that when it comes to baseball. So thank you for listening this week.